This is a date many in the Wyoming Valley will never forget.
This Sunday marks 40 years since a man named George Banks went on a rampage, killing more than a dozen people.
Among the victims were some of George Banks' own children. Newswatch 16's Emily Kress recounts that infamous day with two people who were there.
September 25th, 1982, a date that will forever be a part of Luzerne County history.
It's something that put Wilkes-Barre on the map that really was not something they wanted to have on the map.
It's been 40 years since George Banks, a former prison guard, killed his family in Wilkes-Barre and Jenkins Township, leaving 13 people dead, among them 5 of his own children. Jim Zardecki was the chief county detective on the case. He recounts the moments after he received the call, as nothing could have prepared him for the sights he would see on Schoolhouse Lane.
The thing that stands out most of all of them is that there was a little girl sitting on the bed with her back against the wall, and she had this look of fear in her eyes that you could see, and there was a bullet hole right between her eyes. Her head was cocked and it was splattered with blood behind on the wall.
40 years ago, Al Flora was an assistant public defender in Luzerne County, fresh out of law school. He was called to help defend George Banks. He says it was clear Banks was insane.
I found him to be exceptionally intelligent. Yet at the same time, I saw that he was severely mentally ill when you listen to his thought processes and the way he explained things.
Banks testified on his own behalf during his trial. Flora questioned him on the stand, as Banks told a jury that police killed his victims and moved the bodies to frame him.
After he testified, when he was getting off the stand, and I was the one that questioned him, and I was really distraught over it at that point, that he came past me and he put his hand on my shoulder, and
a jury found Banks guilty and sentenced him to death, but that was later overturned due to his mental incompetence.
I've learned and understand how fragile the human mind is, and everybody has a breaking point.
George Banks remains in prison. He is now 80 years old. Emily Kress, Newswatch 16, Luzerne County.
Today marks a tragic anniversary here in our area. 40 years ago today, George Banks went on his killing spree in Wilkes-Barre and in Jenkins Township. 13 people died as a result, many his own children. Retired Luzerne County Detective Jim Zardecki spoke with us this week about the investigation and the trial that followed.
This case was not an open and shut case. It was open and shut from the viewpoint that, yes, everybody knew he shot him and killed everybody with it, but the insanity defense was critical to us. Insanity is really a legal term, not a medical term, and to know the difference that he was right and wrong, no difference between right and wrong, and knowing there are consequences to what he did is really what we had to show so he wouldn't be found not guilty. And Larry Klimo did a tremendous job with the psychiatrist in the case, and was probably the most critical piece of the case that allowed us to get the conviction that we did at that point in time.
Banks was convicted and sentenced to death. The death penalty, though, was overturned. George Banks is still in jail to this day at the age of 80 years old. If you want to see more from this interview, you can find it on WNEP.com.